Let's talk about what happened with the Federal Reserve today. So there was a meeting yesterday for the Federal Reserve to decide what are we going to do here. Now, three things that the Fed can do when it comes to interest rates. They can reduce interest rates. They can do nothing at all, which means they're pausing interest rate changes, or they can increase them again. Now, based on the press conference that Jerome Powell held today, there was never any question or any discussion amongst the board members of the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. That is not even on the table as an option. It has not been for a long time, really ever since last summer when inflation started to go out of control, and there's no immediate plans in the future to do that. So the only thing up for debate was, are we going to pause interest rate hikes for this meeting, or are we going to increase interest rates again? Those are the only two options that were on the table. As of today, there's not going to be any additional rate hikes. Conservative. He used that term several times throughout the press conference. He did say they're going to continue selling off securities. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about the two main levers that the Federal Reserve pulls in order to cool inflation or to control monetary policy is they can manipulate interest rates to make it either easier or more difficult to obtain money for funding. And they also can either buy securities in order to put more money into the market and into the economy, or they can start to sell off securities, which is what they're doing now. And they're going to continue to sell off securities as a way of of further tightening their monetary policy. They're trying to suck money out of the economy to slow spending down so that inflation will come down. Right. All of this is aimed at manipulating inflation. I wanted to point out a couple of things as I watched the press conference during my lunch break today. One of the things that Powell says, we're strongly committed to this goal of 2%. Now, they've been talking about this inflation goal of 2%. He's talking about this as a long-term goal. They're going to continue to monitor the situation to try to get inflation under control. I find that interesting that he's kind of sticking to his story. Despite the fact that there's all these economic factors that's not going in the direction of driving prices down. See energy prices as going to contribute to higher inflation over the coming months with OPEC restricting the oil supply. Of course, there's a lot of challenges in the housing sector where prices remain sticky and demand is drying up. Price for new cars is already kind of out of the range of affordability. Demand is drying up for those. The Fed is trying to kind of walk this tightrope of, we don't want to raise rates and put an undue amount of pressure on the banks to be unable to respond to these pressures that are happening. And although all of these things are happening that are signaling an economic downturn, the GDP numbers continue to be strong, right? So the cost of goods and services and the overall, the primary metric we use to measure whether we're in recession or whether we're in prosperous times, GDP was revised. Second quarter revision was at 2.1%, which was slightly higher than the 2% they reported when they initially released the report in July. And all indicators are really leaning towards we're going to have another positive GDP quarter this quarter when that report comes out next month, where everything is trending in the direction of the economy is still strong from a GDP standpoint. He did say we got a long way to go in this process. And he did say that they updated their projections to where there will likely be another rate hike before the end of the year. Still think that interest rates are going to go down a little bit lower than they are at the end of this year by the end of 2024. For those of you who are following all of those projections closely, don't pay any attention to any of that. There's so much volatility right now in our economy, and nobody has a crystal ball as to what's going to happen. So, and these are unprecedented times that we're facing in our economy. We've never encountered situations like this before. The combination of economic factors we're facing, we've never faced that in this country's history. So any type of predictive models that are trying to estimate what's going to happen in 12 months, it's impossible for there to be any modicum of accuracy when it comes to those models, because these are unprecedented times. So whatever variables that are being used aren't reliable because we've never seen a situation like this before.